This is MichMash, a weekly conversation where we try to unjumble an important and sometimes under-the-radar statewide story that affects you. I'm Alethia Kasben. This week marks the annual tradition of Michigan's political and business leaders taking planes, trains, and automobiles, and boats to Mackinac Island for the Detroit Regional Chamber Policy Conference. And I am so excited to have my Gongwer News Service colleague, Elena Durnbaugh, with me today to discuss everything that has gone on the Carless Island this week. Elena, welcome back.
Hello, thank you. Hello from the island. We are here. We are making it a week of fun.
So, as we have discussed many times in recent months on MichMash, the GOP-led House and the Democratic-led Senate are at odds with each other much of the time. And this week, they took that show on the road, right, Elena?
They have. The generously tense relationship between Senate Majority Leader Winnie Brinks and House Speaker Matt Hall has surfaced here on the island as the fight over budget negotiations or lack thereof is a frequent talking point for both of them.
Yeah, so we're about a month out from when the budget is sort of due. There is a statutory deadline with no real consequence if it is missed on July 1st, while the actual fiscal year doesn't end until the end of September. So it seems like this is all really coming to a head right now, especially, on an island with a lot of stakeholders who care, about the budget coming together. Nick Smith, our other Gongwer colleague on the island this week, heard from Senate Majority Leader Winnie Brinks on what she sees as a lack of negotiations from Republican Speaker Matt Hall. Here is what she said.
He's not setting up negotiations for success by anyone's professional opinion. We need to be more about, in my opinion, public service, and our job as legislators is about, being honest and working hard and being consistent and trustworthy in your interactions with your colleagues, and that requires sitting down and doing the hard work, one-on-one, not through the press.
So, Elena, Speaker Hall held a press conference on the island this week as well, and he sort of responded to what the Senate Democrats are lodging at him. What did he say?
Yes, so I asked him if he had any plans to deliver even just a House budget by that statutory deadline of July 1st, which is important for things like school districts whose fiscal year starts in July and not in October like the state's does. And he said that he planned to have a budget very quickly, but probably after July 1st.
The Democrats want to shut down the government and blame me, and they think it's funny. We're going to do our best to get a deal, but with this group, I think it's going to be well after July 1, and that's okay, because if we take our time, we're going to do something much better, and we're going to finally fund all of these big priorities for the people of Michigan.
People can, I guess, decide what exactly that means. It seems to be a little bit contradictory very quickly, but not within the next month. So I don't have a whole lot of hope of seeing a House budget before the statutory deadline.
Yeah, so certainly, there are a lot more to happen here in the weeks ahead. It's an excellent point about school districts and local governments have fiscal years that begin in July while the states is later. So, they like to know, what is going on. So you sort of alluded to this, but do you think these two sides can come together when they return to Lansing next week?
That is a great question. I think some of the players who are involved in this budgetary process are in conversation. We've heard from Senator Sarah Anthony, who is the Senate Appropriations Chair, and the House Appropriations Chair, Ann Bolin, that they are having productive conversations. Rep. Tim Kelly, who is the chair of the Education Subcommittee for Appropes in the House, said that he is planning to talk to Senator Darren Camilleri next week. So conversations about the budget are happening, just not between the leaders in the top leaders in the Senate and the House.
All right, so moving on from our friends in the legislature, Governor Gretchen Whitmer was also at the conference. What did we hear from her?
Yeah, so we haven't seen a whole lot of press conferences from her like there have been in years past. She delivered opening remarks yesterday where her focus was a lot on, despite difficult times, uncertainty, turmoil, there's still space to get things done for Michigan. She highlighted the success of getting the new mission for Selfridge Air Base. She highlighted the work that the legislature did back in February on the Earned Sick Time Act and preserving tipped minimum wage. And she even stretched back to last year and said, we passed a budget last year. And that has happened since the last time we were at Mackinac. So she stressed that we can still do hard things in uncertain times if people are willing to work together. And, that's set against the backdrop of, our friends in the legislature are fighting. Nationally, Democrats and Republicans aren't really getting along. So she seemed to be kind of signaling like, hey, we still need to do stuff. Let's keep that in mind. I'm showing that I can still get things done, and I'd like everyone to kind of get on the same page as me.
It is interesting, she was quieter than normal. At these conferences, the governor, will usually make at least one announcement, varying in degree of importance, right? Like she announced her population council there. She has signed the auto insurance legislation there. So certainly the governor has participated in this conference in a big way in years past. This is also happening in the backdrop of President Donald Trump saying that he is considering pardons for the men convicted in the kidnap plot against her, which I think every reporter wants to ask her about. And she did start to address that today, which is Thursday, with some media outlets. She told WDET's Russ McNamara that she's not happy with the Justice Department and the president that are even considering pardons.
When the man took a shot at Donald Trump when he was on the campaign trail in Pennsylvania, I was one of the first office holders on either side of the aisle to condemn it. Anything short of condemning political violence does a disservice to every American. And so I feel strongly about this. I would be incredibly disappointed to see if them take that action, and I certainly will be conveying that to the White House.
You talked to Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy Director Phil Roos on the island. He's come under fire for some permitting decisions in the agency. Did he address that at all with you?
Yeah, he talked a lot about the permitting process and, acknowledged that there is work to be done on the department's end in terms of streamlining the permitting process. But he also stressed that the department is governed by law and they have to do things as is laid out in the law. And those laws are often in place for environmental protection. So they have to balance their mission of, helping people who are looking for permits and that can help with the economic development, but they have to balance that with their mission to protect Michigan's environment, Michigan's Great Lakes, Michigan's natural resources. And kind of looking at that, he was like, and one of the things we want to do as a department is really put customer service at the forefront and really try to be helpful for folks, which he said was going to help with maybe people who are in a hurry to get permits and are not very happy with Eagle.
I've been in this job about, 22 months, almost 2 years. And in my early days on the job, I did a lot of site visits. I went all around the state. And I realized that pretty much everything we do has an economic impact. When we think about permitting, you're holding us back. There's everybody who wants a permit wants it faster or wants less regulation. But that's foundational. That's really important because a lot of these businesses can't function without clean water that we're protecting, or we're trying to protect people from liability too that they might have to incur.
Moving down the list of all the people who are on the island this week, Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan was there, and he, gave his big keynote speech yesterday, which was Wednesday. What is his pitch? He is running for governor without party affiliation, so he has, some work to do right now.
Absolutely. And that was his pitch. Why should Michigan residents turn to him to lead the state, and why it's good that he doesn't have a party affiliation? He talked a lot in his address yesterday about how party labels can sometimes get in the way, especially in Lansing. And he was basically like, look, I want to come in and I want to get things done. And I don't want, the blue or the red, the R or the D to get in the way of solving problems for Michigan. And, yesterday he kind of unveiled this $4.5 billion plan for education and said, this is how I would propose we fix Michigan's education system, build in accountability, build in more funding. And he's like, and I've tried to talk to people in Lansing about this before. I've been working with teachers on it. They all love it. But when I get to Lansing, partisan politics gets in the way. So pick me as an independent, and we can do stuff like this without my party affiliation being a roadblock, essentially.
So Duggan was, boasting some polling that came out this week on the governor's race, very early polling, obviously. But he really liked what he saw about support out of the metro Detroit area, where obviously he is very well known as mayor of Detroit. But I think, this polling still showed him behind the main Democrat and Republican candidate, right?
Sure. Yes, it did. And he acknowledged that. And in a scrum with press after his keynote yesterday, he talked about those numbers and how it's still early and he's planning on getting out in front of the rest of Michigan and having those conversations. And his kind of thoughts on the polling numbers were well, yeah, look, I am behind the other candidates right now, but for running as an independent that isn't well known outside of the metro area, those are pretty good numbers.
Hello, MichMash and WDET listeners. We are so excited to announce that we are bringing your favorite wonky state politics podcast on the road.
That's right. Me, Zach Gorchow, you, Alethia Kasben, and the one and only Shayna Roth are hosting the second MichMash live show in Ferndale. Alethia, tell our wonderful listeners more.
We'll be at the Go Comedy Improv Theater in Ferndale, the city where I, fun fact, got my first cell phone and went on my first date. We'll interview special guests for a MichMash episode. There will be a cash bar, and we'll have fun giveaways. We want you, our listeners, to join us. Zach, how can they attend?
Well, space is limited because this is such a special event. So look for links to reserve your tickets at wdet.org, gongwer.com/blog, and at all social media platforms for both WDET and Gongwer, Michigan. Your favorite public radio station and your favorite news publication are on all the platforms. X, still sometimes called Twitter by me and others, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Blue Sky.
We will be talking about what a jam-packed year it's been so far in Michigan politics and look ahead to an unprecedented 2026 election cycle.
This is big time. We'll see you there. Now back to this week's show.
So, a lot of other candidates are on the island for various races ahead of 2026. What did you see or kind of hear from other candidates?
Sure. We've had an assemblage of people who are planning to run for U.S. Senate. We have all of the different gubernatorial candidates. We have people who are currently, in the House and are looking at running for the Senate. And so despite it being an off election year, everyone is kind of looking ahead to 2026 and making their pitch for why they would be effective in that next role. But it's still all very peaceful because it's not an election year. We've heard Gilchrist kind of start to put a little bit of daylight between him and Governor Whitmer. He suggested to some of our press corps colleagues that, it's time for that Senate election to be called, has cast a little bit of shade on Benson's campaign finance website. So starting to draw some distinctions there. But we're all still very much bipartisanship and working together to do the hard things because it's not an election year yet.
Yeah, totally. I think, and a lot of the candidates who are in public office right now, are there. But some of the candidates, who are not in office, who are not in state office, are not there. Like Don James isn't there, although he is in Congress. I don't believe Mike Rogers is there, who is running for U.S. Senate. So there's a lot of candidates there, some who aren't. And I know that you're going to talk to Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist later. Elena's doing this podcast, but she is still working on the island as we speak. But what I find interesting is, just with how quiet Governor Whitmer has been, the Lieutenant Governor has done a lot of press conferences.
He's
really
been out in front of the press. Yes. Yeah. He did 3 press conferences yesterday alone. I think he had another one this morning. He has really been making himself available and out front and been having conversations. Like I will say that his comms team on his campaign side worked very hard to find a time to sit down with me today. So it's Garland Gilchrist wants to talk to the press this week.
So, this is, a kind of political and business conference, and AI is sort of a really big topic of conversation in both of those worlds. Has that come up a lot in this year's conference?
Yeah, there have been a lot of panels where AI has been discussed. And it's in terms of regulation, how much regulation is needed. There was a panel with the congressional delegates earlier today, and they were talking about, the need for regulation and should that be happening at the federal level or the state level. It's in parts of conversations about education. How much should AI be used for education? Should that be regulated? There's talks about AI as it relates to workforce. There is a worker shortage in a lot of different sectors in Michigan, and the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity was discussing, well, is there a way for us to fill some of these positions with AI? Senator Alyssa Slotkin was talking about AI when it comes to national defense. There are a lot of different ways this technology can slot into our world, our society, how we're operating. But folks up here are kind of questioning how can we do that safely and responsibly in a way that doesn't hurt the people we're trying to help.
Would you say that there was, a theme for the conference this year?
Yeah, so the theme is interesting. As we've talked about here, we love bipartisanship. We're going to work together. We're going to do hard things. But that's kind of what's out front. We're working together. But this is all happening against the background of some uncertainty at the state and federal level when it comes to budgets, tariffs, what have you. So what is more important here, I think, right now is the conversations that are happening off the stage, not in front of the press. It's the stakeholders, the interest groups who are coming here to be like, hey, can I please still have funding for this program? Or I want to make sure this gets into the budget. This is still important. So this theme seems to be coming together in a moment of uncertainty to kind of hash out priorities for businesses and politicians and all the people up here across the state.
Elena, thank you so much for covering the island for us this week. Safe travels home.
Thank you much. I appreciate it.